Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert. I'm president of Patriot Gear LLC. I have with me this evening Stefan, who is the vice president of Patriot Gear LLC, and also Gwen, and she is one of our primary religious researchers. We're going to be going over some information from a historical and a theological type perspective on the eclipse, different events that might be coming up, and we're going to kind of discuss some of them briefly and not go down the rabbit hole, but other things we might actually talk a little bit more in depth. First thing I'm going to talk about is the possible correlations between earthquakes and total solar eclipses. First, everybody should know that in order to have a full solar or total solar eclipse, a new moon is needed to pass in front of the sun. There's the possibility, although it hasn't been, people haven't actually confirmed, that when these total solar eclipses occur, that they pull over and possibly loosen the crust and the plates below them. There's been several other instances of total solar eclipses that have happened in the past where earthquake activity and other activity has actually materialized not directly at the same time, but within months of the eclipse actually occurring. In September of 1811, there was a total solar eclipse. The shadow of the eclipse actually went over the New Madrid fault line, and that was September of 1811. And 3 months later, between December 1811 and 1812, the New Madrid fault line popped off with several very, very large earthquakes all the way from December through January. And I believe some of the top earthquakes were in the magnitude of 8 and 9.
So how much of the area was affected by the New Madrid fault earthquake, right?
Right.
From what point to what point geographically in the U.S. was actually affected significantly by this earthquake?
I don't know. I didn't actually get to pull that data, but it was pretty big. There was widespread large tremors and aftershocks, and I believe from what I read, there was over 5,000 aftershocks between 2 and 5, all the way into March of 1812.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned this component. I didn't know that there was an eclipse that correlated with the earthquake that took place in New Madrid Fault. And as of last night, there was a discussion that was taking place with one of the scientists, and he did come around and mention that, yes, the possibility of earthquakes being an issue or a factor during the total solar eclipse is actually there. And he seemed to distance himself from his comments previously, but that did come up last night in the discussion.
So in July of 1963, there was another total eclipse that went over the state of Alaska. That was July 1963. In March of 1964, there was a devastating 8 to 9 magnitude earthquake that actually happened and devastated Anchorage, Alaska. So more recently, we've had the solar eclipse that was over the one that was in August 21st of 2017. That one also went over the New Madrid. The upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th is also going to go over the New Madrid. So we've got kind of a crossover for both right over the New Madrid fault line. So what's going to happen with that? That's going to be the question.
I was going to say where it intersect, that was near Carbondale, Illinois, where it intersect, the old one and then this one today, or I mean this upcoming, it will intersect, you know, and that path and this path. And that was, I want to say, around 2/3 of the nation were within a few hours of that. And this one, hours from that. So it did center in near Carbondale, Illinois, which is south of Chicago, in a very rural farmland type thing. Do we know what states are affected by the new Madrid?
Southeastern Missouri, northeastern Kansas, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and southern Illinois.
And that's a huge amount of our farmland right there. And that would be affected by the salt water intrusion if the Mississippi was affected.
So another instance of a total solar eclipse occurred on July 11th of 2010. This one actually happened over the southern part of the Ring of Fire, which goes around the entire Pacific, as everybody knows. Later on, in March 2011, there was a 9.0 to 9.1 earthquake. It was an undersea megathrust, 72 miles east of Osaka Peninsula. The earthquake lasted 6 minutes, and it caused damage to the shoreline and also caused a tsunami.
That would be the previous geological stuff that we've talked about. At the same time, we've got a nexus of the different religions regarding certain types of celebrations. Gwen, with your background, you know a lot more about that than we do. If you wanted to jump in and give us your take on that.
Hello. I was going to talk to you about some of the spring observances for the three major monotheistic world religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The first this spring that is occurring is Ramadan, which is occurring between March 10th and through April the 9th, 2024, this year. And the second occurrence will be Purim, which is scheduled for March 25th, 2024. The third is the traditional observance of Easter, which is Good Friday through Resurrection morning, and that will be March 29th through the 31st, 2024. And the fourth observance will be Nisan 1, which is the first day of the Jewish religious New Year. And that will be on April the 9th, 2024. And then the fifth observance will be Passover, which will be April 23rd, 2024. And Pentecost or Shavuot, which is observed by both Christians and Jews, is going to be celebrated on June the 12th, 2024. And upcoming, we have an annular eclipse, and that will be on March 25th, 2024. And then we also have the upcoming total solar eclipse on April the 8th, 2024.
In addition to the religious festivities for the three different major religions, monotheistic religions that are taking place, another factor that comes into this eclipse, this total solar eclipse, is the fact that we've got a comet coming through, referred to as the Devil's Comet. It's been seen where it has kind of a horn-like appearance because of the cryovolcanoes that are erupting on it. So you figure that in with everything else taking place. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more going on than what would happen during a normal total solar eclipse. What this kind of reminds me of, just off the top of my head, is we're looking at the potential for human sacrifices taking place, because I imagine the Satanists have their own version where they tend to copycat anything the Christians do and kind of reverse it or flip it on its head. So in their case, we're probably looking at the Satanists doing human sacrifice. And it also reminds me of the Heaven's Gate cult. Whenever they had that comet passing by, you had a suicide of approximately, 39 people? Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Yeah, 39 people committed suicide during that comet. So there's the potential for these things taking place. And Bob, I believe that there was a number of events going on right now with our military and with our government indicating that there's a concern of some kind. What do you know?
Exactly. So right now what's going on is, and I'm sure everybody's heard this, is the Oklahoma National Guard is deploying several, I think it was up to 22 individuals or more on April 8th for the eclipse. So these people are CBRN trained, from what I understand, and they're also getting ready to mobilize emergency response teams and hazmat teams. What they've been saying is, from what I understand, is that this is for the potential for industrial or chemical disasters during the eclipse time. Along with that, different law enforcement agencies also being mobilized in Pennsylvania, because they're expecting upwards of 250,000 people up by Lake Erie. So that's also another mobilization going on there. Several states are also warning to stock up on supplies. Texas is one of them. It's all kind of a weird situation where we don't expect anything to happen, but there could be something that could happen.
Interestingly enough, I have been getting word that there are some concerns about potential terroristic activity that could take place during that time frame. So we're looking at, so the 29th of March seems to be a day of concern. I wasn't given specifics of that, but for whatever reason, that is a day of concern. In
That's
addition,
Good Friday. That's Good Friday.
yes, from the religious perspective, yes. But for some reason that day was highlighted in some discussions. In addition, yeah, we had the mobilization of the forces in New York. We know that terrorists like to attack subways. Like in England, I think we had an issue that was taking place here a couple years back. We're looking at the same thing again. I think the deployment of troops is not a coincidence or related to just crime as they said it was. I do believe it's getting ready for terrorism taking place in the subways. That said, there was the warning of terrorism. From my own experience, we've got the Muslims like to attack at the conclusion of Ramadan, and typically either at the beginning of or at the end of Jewish holidays as well. So the fact that we've got one ending Ramadan or beginning and the other one ending, again, you can remind me what that was or remind our audience what that was. That tells me that we're definitely in the window for a terrorist attack. So it would make sense. I do know that a green light was given, caught on some intercepted traffic, communications traffic, that a green light was given for terroristic actions to take place inside the United States. So it's kind of like all tying together at the same time as this eclipse. So that certainly isn't going to make things any easier for the government and the military forces that are out there trying to protect us.
Okay, so in addition to the activations of other units, the Army has actually put out, it's called an ALARACT, which is an All Armies Activities Message 017, basically 17/2024. It deals with the possibility of mobilization of everybody from active to even retirees. It was actually an all points message to all activities. So I just wanted to add that in there. The message was put out, and we don't know whether it's in response to the possibility of NATO possibly going into Ukraine, whether it's eclipse related. But there was a captain that was activated that I saw on social media. It's got different social media platforms. He was stating that he believes that there will be something happening within the next 2 to 3 months. What a lot of social media producers are stating, and we've also been stating that for quite some time.
There was also a concern that some Arab nations were potentially gearing up for an attack on Israel in retaliation for this ongoing issue with Gaza. So that could also be a preparation for that. The one thing that we know when we start looking at biblical scripture, and Kavina, you can step in if I'm getting this wrong or backwards, if you got something you want to add, but before the Muslims or an Arab group of nations could actually carry out a successful attack against Israel, because of the capabilities of Israel and the ability of America to support the Israelis very quickly, it would be incumbent upon any attacker to find a way to occupy America's time or distract America before they conducted such an attack. So it wouldn't make sense that there would be a series of terrorist attacks inside the United States before an Islamic attack would take place on Israel. Now, this may not happen right now. This is something that could happen in the future, but it is something that we need to be aware of. Kavina, anything you want to add to that?
As you had mentioned earlier, during this eclipse that's coming up on April the 8th, 2024, that's going to be crossing the North American continent, while the eclipse is happening, and especially in its totality, we'll be able to see the green, the devil comment that it's being called, which is green in color. You'll be able to see it in the shadow, and otherwise you wouldn't be able to see it during the daytime. So it'll be visible during the eclipse. And in biblical times, comets were considered messengers. And I think this is interesting, one, in its name, and two, in its color, because there are some warring factions and folks who use a green banner as a form of conquering. And so I find that to be a little bit significant, perhaps. And also, in the Bible, the moon is, well, actually, Israel is represented by the moon, the waxing and waning. During a total solar eclipse, you can actually see the new moon in its shadow. But the Jewish month starts with the very first sliver of the waxing moon.
I did
So-
take a look at, I'm gonna jump in here real quick. I did take a look at the issue with the comet and the green coma, or the glow around the nucleus. And that's due to the effect of sunlight on diatomic carbon and cyanogen. So meaning that there's a cyanide gas or type gas in this particular comet.
So Israel, in its history, when it's at its greatest spiritual potential, it is represented by the full moon, and a growing full moon. And when it's at its lower potential, it's by its diminishing moon. Where you have a solar eclipse, that is considered judgment upon the area that it is encompassing, that it's tracking over.
So what you're saying
So-
is America is being judged yet again.
Perhaps, or look for future judgment, or it's being judged.
Gwen, you look
And I-
like you got something that you can't wait to say.
Yes, yes. I just found it maybe an hour or so before we did our thing. It was a study in popular mechanics, but here's the deal. Because we have pumped so much water, groundwater out, and we've, irrigation or whatever, the ground doesn't have as much water. That has led to 1.5-inch extra degree to our tilt. And the water that we do use goes to the ocean. So when you have the gravitational pulls, it's going to affect, and you don't have that cushion of water underneath anymore. And that's going to affect the gravitational pull, and plus the extra magnetic activity. I think that will affect the New Madrid fault much more. And of course, that saltwater intrusion up the Mississippi. And we've already had, some difficulties with the Mississippi, the barges hitting the bottom and silt and stuff like that.
Interestingly enough, you mentioned the 30-something degrees, and there's a couple videos that are out right now by some really smart guys that know a lot about geology and some other issues. And they had mentioned that the tilt that they were expecting is around the 30-degree range. I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. We will have some links posted that you may find relevant to this discussion and to help you with your own planning. And I believe Bob will have some links for us for different products from Patriot Gear that might be able to help you be prepared for this event and any other event that may occur in the future. Sounds like that will give us enough to talk about for another discussion. That ties in with things I've been warned about from government guys.
I could just recommend for folks that they were to look up the scriptures, Exodus chapter 34, verses 5 through 7, and then 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 14.
Thanks, Gwen. I'll take a look.
Thank you very much. We've talked about a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff that's taking place, as everybody knows, worldwide. There's the eclipse, possibility of natural disasters, possibility of terrorist attacks on the continental United States, overseas skirmishes, military call-ups. There's a whole lot going on. People telling us that we need to be prepared for something. So we're not trying to fearmonger. We're trying to just let everybody know that it's always a good idea to be ready for anything. Hope that nothing actually does happen. All right. So if you like what you saw tonight, hit that like button, subscribe. You're welcome to contact us and let us know if you want to hear any type of other types of topics. We're always willing to do that and entertain possibly doing that as well. It's great talking to everybody, and we hope to see you again.